Breaking news in the early hours of the morning at approximately 2 hours. The $2,000 tariff rebate checks are now in place. Just moments ago, in a development that caught Washington and millions of Americans completely off guard, the White House announced a major late-night decision. In a move without precedent, the president signed the revised structure of the $2,000 tariff rebate checks, turning weeks of speculation into policy. This was not a routine announcement. There was no prime-time press conference, no extended briefing, and no early warning to the public. Instead, the news came quietly through internal Treasury notifications, the kind that usually do not surface unless something has already been decided and set in motion. For seniors across the country, especially those living on fixed incomes, this moment is far more significant than it may appear at first glance. Because behind the headlines and behind the silence, something meaningful shifted. The original design of this program was focused largely on workers and middle-income households affected by rising tariffs. But the internal documents released overnight reveal something very different. A quiet restructuring that finally recognizes what many older Americans have been feeling for months. The tariff rebate program is funded through revenue collected from import tariffs, not through traditional stimulus legislation. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. It means these payments do not require a brand new vote in Congress. Once eligibility categories are finalized, the Treasury has the legal authority to move forward. And according to officials familiar with the process, the president reviewed a revised eligibility framework late in the evening after reviewing one painful truth. Inflation has hit older Americans harder than almost anyone else. For more than 10 years, the focus has been on helping seniors navigate retirement decisions, protect their savings, and feel more confident about the future. There is a deep care for clarity, especially when something this important happens quietly in the middle of the night without much explanation. The goal here is simple: to help you understand what changed, why it matters, and what it could mean for you without fear, confusion, or false promises. So let us take this step by step, calmly and clearly. What happened overnight was not just the news of a $2,000 payment. The more important shift happened behind the scenes. Treasury officials reviewed new economic reports, and those reports showed something most seniors already know in their hearts. Fixed incomes do not stretch the way they used to. Groceries cost more. Utilities cost more. Prescription medications cost more. Even small increases feel heavy when your income does not rise to match them. While many working households can adjust over time, seniors often cannot. And for the first time since this program was discussed, that reality was placed front and center. Instead of treating seniors as one more group in a long line, the revised structure begins moving those with the least financial flexibility closer to the front. This was not rolled out with fanfare because it was not designed as political theater. It was a technical, administrative green light, the kind that signals movement from conversation to execution. Because this program is funded through tariff revenue that already exists, Treasury did not need to build an entirely new system. They needed to adjust priorities. And that is exactly what happened. The decision that came through quietly was not about promising the world. It was about acknowledging vulnerability, recognizing need, and reshaping the order in which relief is reviewed and processed. For seniors living on Social Security, supplemental security income, or disability benefits, that shift matters. It means your situation is finally being seen not as an afterthought, but as something deserving careful attention. Over the next few minutes, we are going to talk about what this shift really means, who may be affected, what you should and should not do next, and how to stay calm and prepared while everything moves forward behind the scenes. The job is not to push fear or hype. The job is to help you feel informed, steady, and supported because you deserve clarity and peace of mind. As details from the internal briefing slowly became clearer, one theme kept showing up again and again. Older Americans were carrying more financial pressure than the original program accounted for. Across every report, seniors consistently showed higher levels of financial stress with far less room to adapt. Rising grocery prices were not just inconvenient, they were forcing choices between healthy food and cheaper substitutes. Utility increases were not just frustrating, they were pushing people to turn the air conditioner off, stretch heating oil, or try to conserve electricity in ways that affected comfort and health. And medical costs, co-pays, prescriptions, treatments continued creeping upward in small but relentless steps. For someone living on a fixed benefit check, those little increases stack up fast. And what truly stood out to economists reviewing the data was simple but powerful. Seniors do not have the same ability to replace lost income or absorb surprise expenses. A worker can sometimes pick up extra hours, negotiate pay, or find part-time work, but most retirees cannot. Their budget is already carefully balanced, and there is not much left to cut. That is what ultimately triggered the review. The White House and Treasury were presented with updated figures that showed a widening gap between costs and benefits for seniors, particularly those receiving smaller monthly Social Security amounts. The analysis showed something troubling. While inflation touched nearly everyone, seniors on limited benefits felt it immediately and deeply. They were not spending on luxuries. They were trying to stay afloat. And when policymakers saw that, they realized the original plan unintentionally pushed many seniors toward the end of the line. Quietly, the discussion shifted. Instead of asking, who is included? The new question became, who has the least room to recover if we wait? That small change in thinking is what moved seniors out of the background and toward the center of the conversation, from experience sitting across the table from retirees. This does not surprise. People stretch prescriptions. Grocery lists are pared down to the bare minimum, and there is the quiet worry and voices when unexpected bills show up. Seniors rarely complain loudly. They adjust, endure, and try not to trouble anyone. But the economic reality eventually shows up in the numbers, and that is exactly what happened here. The revised structure was not designed to reward one group over another. It was designed to recognize vulnerability. And once that vulnerability became impossible to ignore, change followed. Now, as Treasury began reshaping the program, they did not simply add seniors to an existing list. They rebuilt the review process itself. Instead of treating every household the same, they introduced a tier system, not to complicate things, but to make sure the people feeling the most pressure were no longer waiting behind those with more flexibility. In the original design, priority leaned heavily toward working households affected by tariffs because policymakers assumed those families would experience the fastest economic shock. But the new data painted a different picture. Seniors, especially low-income seniors, were being squeezed more tightly and more quickly than expected. So, the model was adjusted. In simple terms, here is what changed. Without any technical jargon, Treasury created priority lanes. The first lane is designed for households with the least purchasing power and the smallest financial cushion. That now includes many seniors who rely mainly on Social Security, supplemental security income, or disability benefits. These cases move through review faster, not because they are more deserving, but because the system recognizes that these households feel inflation sooner and have fewer options when it hits. The second lane still includes millions of households who qualify, but their review may take longer simply because their financial position gives them slightly more room to absorb rising costs. A third lane exists for situations that need extra verification or involve higher incomes. What matters most is this: seniors are no longer automatically placed at the end. The restructuring does not guarantee instant payments, and it does not mean everyone will be treated identically, but it does mean the system now looks at real-world impact rather than assumptions. If your income is fixed, if your monthly check is your lifeline, and if rising prices leave you with painful choices, the updated approach is designed to recognize that sooner instead of later. And while this change happened quietly, it represents something important. Acknowledgement, finally, that financial stability in retirement should not feel like a constant fight. As the revised structure became clearer, many seniors began asking the same quiet question: where do I fit in all of this? And that is a fair question. What is important to understand is that the Treasury did not create a single narrow doorway. Instead, they looked at patterns, real lives, real budgets, and real vulnerability. The strongest early priority appears to lean towards seniors who rely mainly on federal benefits as their primary source of income. That includes people whose household income is built mostly around Social Security, supplemental security income, disability benefits, or survivor's benefits. These are households where every dollar already has a job and where unexpected price increases do not simply squeeze the budget. They erase the breathing room entirely. Internal guidance suggests that many of the most vulnerable seniors fall under roughly $30,000 per year in total income. But income alone is not the full story anymore. Treasury began weighing something deeper: stability. If your income is fixed, predictable, and does not have room to grow, the model recognizes that you feel inflation differently from someone who can still increase earnings over time. Seniors receiving under about $1,300 a month were flagged as especially strained. And those receiving less than around $1,100 monthly were placed into an even more sensitive category, not as a label, but as an acknowledgement that day-to-day life at that level leaves almost no margin for surprises. Another important piece involves what Treasury calls fast verify households. These are cases where most of the information needed, income, identity, and benefit details already exist inside federal systems. Seniors often fall into this category simply because their records are steady and consistent. That means their files can be reviewed faster, not because of favoritism, but because less manual work is required, and that can make a difference in timing. But it is also important to be gentle and honest here. Being in a priority group does not automatically mean instant approval. It does not guarantee dates, and it does not mean everyone will move through at the same pace. What it does mean is that the system is finally designed to see you not as a number, but as someone whose financial reality deserves thoughtful consideration. Naturally, the next question becomes, do I need to do anything to get this? And thankfully, in most situations, the answer is no. One of the quiet strengths of this program is that it leans heavily on information the government already has. That means eligibility reviews are being handled through existing Internal Revenue Service records and Social Security Administration systems. For the majority of seniors, there is no separate application, no special form, and no race to sign up before a deadline. In fact, the intention is to minimize paperwork so seniors do not feel overwhelmed or left behind. However, there are a few important situations where you may be asked for confirmation. If you have moved recently, change your bank account, or have records that do not match across systems, you could see a request to verify or update information. Those notices would appear inside government portals, not through random emails, texts, or phone calls. If you use the IRS online account or the My Social Security portal, those are the places to check periodically. Responding promptly helps keep your review from getting pushed aside while they wait for corrections. And this must be said clearly because it matters. No legitimate agency will call you asking for your full Social Security number, banking login, or an activation fee to release money. If someone pressures you, threatens you, or demands payment to help you get approved, that is not the government. That is a scam. Hang up. Take a breath. And if you are unsure, ask someone you trust before doing anything. This program was built to be as hands-off as possible for seniors. And if you are staying alert, calm, and patient, you are already doing exactly what you should. As word of the news spread, another question began rising to the top. When will the money actually arrive? And the answer must be given in a grounded, honest way, not with guesses and not with exaggerated promises. What happened at 2 a.m. in the morning was a green light for the Treasury to move forward, not an instant release of funds. There is a sequence to how this works. First, eligibility models finish running. Then, records are matched across systems. Then, payment methods like direct deposit or paper checks are verified. Only after those steps line up does the payment process begin. So, while seniors in the priority lanes may see movement sooner than others, that movement often shows up first as status updates, messages inside federal portals, not immediately as money in the bank. For many people, that can feel confusing. You may hear friends talk about receiving notices before anything actually arrives, and that is normal. The system works in stages. Some seniors may seek notices weeks before others who are in different review lanes. That does not mean anyone is being left behind. It simply reflects the order in which records are processed, because seniors with steady Social Security or supplemental security income records are easier to verify. Many of those files move through earlier. But even inside that group, timing can vary. A small mismatch in an address, a bank account change, or an identity flag can pause the process until the system feels confident everything is accurate. The best guidance here is this: stay patient, stay observant, and remember that slow movement does not mean no movement. Quiet progress behind the scenes often happens long before payments ever appear. And of course, the fear heard from seniors more than any other is this one: if I receive this rebate, will it hurt my benefits? Let us take a moment and walk through that calmly. The $2,000 rebate is not considered wages. It is not treated as earned income. It is not designed as a benefit adjustment. It is categorized as a rebate funded through tariff revenue, which places it outside the normal formulas used for Social Security, supplemental security income, and disability benefits. That means it should not reduce your monthly Social Security checks. It should not trigger benefit reviews. It should not interfere with cost of living increases. And it is not intended to reopen your file simply because you received it. For seniors on supplemental security income, the concern can feel even heavier because those programs include strict limits. What the guidance makes clear is that the rebate itself is not counted as regular income for those calculations. However, it is always important to be realistic here. If a large sum sits untouched for an extended period, it may eventually matter in certain asset-based evaluations. That is why the advice being shared quietly is simple and practical. Use the money thoughtfully, especially for essentials like food, utilities, medical needs, or catching up on overdue bills. It was designed as relief, not as something that should cause worry or confusion. And importantly, receiving this rebate does not place a target on your back. It does not invite audits. Eligibility reviews happen before approval, not after. Once you are cleared, the purpose of the program is to help, not to complicate your life. So with everything we have talked about, the natural question becomes, what should you actually do right now? And the answer, thankfully, is simple. The most important step is making sure your information is accurate. If you have an online IRS account or a My Social Security portal, take a few minutes to log in when you can and make sure your mailing address and direct deposit information are current. Small errors, an old address, a closed bank account, or a typo are often the reason payments get delayed or rerouted. If something needs updating, do it directly inside those systems. There is no need to rush, no need to panic, but staying ahead of those details can save weeks of waiting later. The second thing to encourage is awareness without worry. Check portals occasionally, but do not obsess over them. You do not need to sign up for anything special. You do not need to claim your rebate through a third party, and you should never feel pressured by anyone promising faster processing for a fee. If a message, phone call, or email asks for personal information, banking details, gift cards, or any kind of payment to help you receive your money, that is not how legitimate programs work. Hang up, delete it, walk away. The real system does not need your help to do its job. Third, prepare thoughtfully for how you would like to use the money if and when it arrives. Relief funds like this are meant to ease pressure, not create temptation or stress. For many seniors, the greatest peace comes from covering necessities, catching up on bills, refilling prescriptions, handling car repairs, or putting something aside for upcoming medical appointments. When money has a purpose, it brings calm instead of anxiety. And finally, give yourself permission to breathe. This process may move quietly and sometimes more slowly than any of us would like, but slow movement is still movement. Staying steady, informed, and patient matters more than anything. As we come to a close, something must be said from the heart. Over the past several years, so many seniors have carried rising costs with quiet strength. You have stretched budgets, you have made sacrifices, you have worried silently, sometimes without telling your children or friends, because you did not want to be a burden. This update does not solve everything, but it is a meaningful acknowledgement that your challenges are real, and that you should not always be last in line. That matters. You deserve dignity, you deserve stability, and you deserve clear information instead of confusion and fear. If this conversation helped you feel a little more grounded, a little more confident, then that is a true reward. That is why this work is done. And before you go, consider the wisdom you carry. What is one money lesson you wish you had learned sooner? Something you think might help someone else. Your story may be exactly what another person needs to hear. And as always, the commitment is to walk beside you calmly, clearly, and with care as more updates unfold. Stay informed, stay safe, and take good. This content is for informational purposes only. Payment details and timing may vary by individual situation. Viewers should verify information through trusted benefit portals and remain alert to scams.